Metaphor Refantazio converted me. Hello, everybody, I am Jmulls of Jmulls Gaming, and I am now a Shin Megami Tensei player and enjoyer. Let's talk about it. For the longest time, since pretty much around the launch of Persona 5, I have been a big fan of Persona. And I still largely am. I love that series to death. Okay, well, by series I mean 3, 4, and 5, and quite a few of the spin-offs. But I love Persona, and I love its combat. But the funny thing is, Persona was originally a spin-off of another series that Atlus does, Shin Megami Tensei. And I just don't have much experience, if at all, when it comes to SMT. The most I have is playing a little bit of SMT 5 when it first came out on the Switch, and it just didn't click with me because of the boss design. But I thought the world and the environment overall was really cool and compelling. I just couldn't fully get hooked into it. But then Atlus comes out with Metaphor Refantazio, a game that would go on to become my co-game of the year alongside Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. And I love Metaphor Refantazio so much. And while a lot of its gameplay formula is heavily inspired, if not just straight up lifted, from Persona and iterated on, because this is what Atlus loves to do, look at what came before and say, how can we do this better? The combat, though, when it comes to Metaphor Refantazio, was not similar to Persona. It's far more reminiscent of Shin Megami Tensei, utilizing this system known as the press turn system. Instead of each character having their own turn, you get a set number of turn icons that you can use and spend to whatever efficiency you particularly want. As you cycle through your party members, this also applies to the enemies. It may sound very similar to Persona and a lot of other turn-based games, but there are subtle differences, especially when it concerns the strategy behind how to properly make use of this system. It heavily incentivizes landing your hits and not missing, because missing, or being blocked or repelled or whatnot, drains multiple turn icons. It is extremely punishing, but playing around with it in Metaphor Refantazio, I fell in love with this system. And wanting more of that combat loop, and not just wanting to do another playthrough of Metaphor Refantazio, that'll probably come down the line, my eye became gravitated to their other series, Shin Megami Tensei. So I decided to once more take the plunge, and this time start with Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne HD Collection. A smorgasbord of a name, but I have been really enjoying this game a lot. Now, it is not similar to Persona, so if you are like me and you want to take the dive into Shin Megami Tensei after being a Persona fan and playing Metaphor Refantazio, wanting more of that combat loop and saying, maybe I'll try out Shin Megami Tensei, it is not like Persona, but that's not a bad thing. It just means that it's different. And I just got past the Matador fight in Shin Megami Tensei 3, which is one of the most well-known and infamous fights in SMT3 for being this massive spike in difficulty out of nowhere. And I'm a little over 13 hours into the game. Now, veteran SMT3 fans may be going, Jmulls, how in the living hell are you just after Matador and 13 hours into the game? Funny thing about this, see, when I play SMT3 Nocturne on Steam, that's where I play it. That version has 3 different versions of SMT3. The original, and then it has 2 other versions. Those 2 other versions are kind of like the Persona 5 Royal to original SMT3's Persona 5. Think of it like that. Not knowing that, though, I thought going in those were just difficulty options, so I went with original SMT3, got to where Matador was supposed to be, and then my chat was like, wait a minute, where the hell's Matador? And me being one stubborn jabroni, I decided, you know what I'm going to do? Just restart the playthrough, so yeah, that happened. But the funny thing was, despite the fact I was like 5 hours into the game at that point, I wasn't that perturbed about restarting the game because the game's just really fun to play. And that's the funny thing, when it comes to a lot of these older RPGs, you expect there to be some like aged elements that just make the game overtly frustrating and stuff like that. And there's some elements like that, don't get me wrong, but the game just has this really solid vision. It's this really cool post-apocalyptic world filled with really cool characters that you're not going to get the level of storytelling that you want or expect out of another game like, say, Persona, but it focuses more so in on really solid pacing and the combat loop, which I think is simple but really fun. The story so far is solidly whatever to me. We're still very early on, and I think this still putting the pieces of the puzzle on the board for the events to follow, but the story itself is not the reason I've been enjoying SMT3. It's been the gameplay, but also the world. A lot of the personas and shadows you know from Persona are demons in SMT3, and they're characters that populate the world and that you fight throughout your adventures in Shin Megami Tensei, and they can be a very colorful bunch. I think the game, when it comes to the actual dialogue, when you're talking to various NPCs, just has this weird charm to it. It's nothing overtly deep at anything like that, but it can be funny with its timing. Like, you walk into this random room, and there's a kid in there. Who the hell is this kid? Hey, do you know Gozu Tenno? No, but I know Goku. Yeah, cool. Alright, what happens if I don't know him, though? You blow! Don't say I blow! SMT3 is a brutal game, and nothing ever really feels friendly to you outside of the occasional ghost that might be a bit kind. But it's little scenarios and pieces of dialogue and interactions like this that I do find really charming. In this post-apocalyptic Tokyo hellscape, it adds just enough character and personality into the overall world to keep me engaged and interested to find out what happens in the future. I think I also just really enjoy the press turn system, because combat has been so fun even when I'm fighting things under my level. And there's a lot of design in SMT3 that I just go, oh, that's really clever and that's smart. A lot of the combat animations in combat are rather quick. One of my biggest issues with a lot of turn-based RPGs is just how long the animations go. Because if I'm dumping tens and tens of hours into this game, I'm going to get bored of seeing the same animation over and over and over again. I want to just get the results and keep moving. I'm impatient like that. With SMT3, I haven't really had that issue because of how fast it is. And I love the fact that basic attacking feels viable here. It allows me to be efficient when it comes to MP usage and not feel the need to use something that costs MP every fight. I think SMT3 relies on simplicity, and I think it does a good job of doing that. The story so far feels like it's going to get really deep and macabre and all that, but right now, where I'm at in the game, it's pretty much a post-apocalyptic Tokyo. I got turned into a demon dude, which kind of sounds like every light novel title ever, and I'm going around this post-apocalyptic hellscape, and everything has character. When I'm fighting demons and I'm trying to negotiate with them to join my party, it's simple stuff. They ask for money or they ask for an item, but just because you give them these things doesn't necessarily mean they'll join you. They might just take your stuff and leave. Sometimes you have to tell them no, and they respect you for that. It's these little moments where they inject character even into the enemies you fight, which are random encounters in the world, that makes a world that I want to learn more about and explore, and become interested in. It's a game that relies a lot on the aesthetic and the tone and the feel of it, while being bolstered with rock-solid gameplay. And you may be going, Jmulls, what about what you said earlier when there are 3 versions? You have that one version which is like Persona 5, which is the base version of SMT3, but what about the other 2? I'm playing the Maniacs version. Pretty much the only difference between these other 2 modes, like the upgraded versions of SMT3, we all know Atlus does this, is what guest character you get. So in Maniacs, I get Dante from Devil May Cry. Yeah, that meme. But then the point where I really started to fall in love with SMT3 was Matador. Dude's a massive spike in difficulty, and in any other game this would have been a critique of mine, where I go, this dude comes out of absolutely nowhere and just throws bullcrap at you. Like, so much. And the idea behind Matador is it's supposed to teach you about buff and debuff management. That's kind of the gimmick of the fight. You're not going to really get past him unless you're wildly overleveled if you don't understand buff and debuff management. You can ignore it up to that point. Matador's where they go, okay, you need to know this. I didn't have the right setup or the right loadout to deal with Matador efficiently. I thought I was going to need to spend hours and hours grinding to get the right demons, and the right setup needed. But it turns out there's DLC areas they added to this game that serve as grind spots, and you can just go to them, fight a few demons, and they have a decent chance at dropping these books. If they drop a thick book, that just gets you a level. If they drop a thin book, it's like a quarter of a level, at least it was for me. And these aren't particularly rare items either. I spend, like 30 minutes on stream just farming this area, chatting it up with chat, and I got enough to level up my MC from around level 15 up to 25. I then managed to go get another demon, unicorn, that was the perfect addition to my team for Matador. So I go back to Matador and I lay the thickest smackdown on him, and I beat him almost out of nowhere. It shocked me how quickly I actually beat him because I was chucking damage. But I love the fact that this game was constructed in such a way to where if it's going to throw this big wall at me, the player, the game gives me an easy way to grind to prepare myself so I can then come back stronger than ever. I don't have to find some arbitrary grind spot right outside the boss room, taking up all my dang time. The game has these locations designed to go grind to expedite the process. I love it when games do that because I don't mind a grind, but I like a smart grind. This was a smart grind to me, and it gave me the satisfaction that I look for out of these games. If the game is going to throw a bunch of BS at me, I like to throw a lot of BS at it. I got focus and count on my MC, so every time Matador tried to attack me, sometimes I would just strike right back. I had a Jack Frost also with focus. So I'm just hitting for a ton of damage. Unicorn has media and a defense buff for everybody. I have a Shikigami applying an agility debuff to Matador. It felt good to be able to identify the problem and then in a time-efficient manner, put myself in a position to overcome that challenge. I couldn't even make full use of my strategy, funnily enough, because on Unicorn, I had the ability for him to automatically crit with every physical attack if I attack an enemy at the right time, which just amounts to walking around till the time ticks over to the right time, and then going into the Matador fight. The problem I ran into was Unicorn just kept missing every attack, but I still managed to overcome Matador. It felt so good. I was wondering this before Metaphor even came out, and I was thinking this throughout playing Metaphor, and I think it's still after playing Metaphor. I wonder if that game, not entirely, right? It's supposed to be its own thing. I wonder if Atlus was anticipating it being a bit of a pipeline for Persona fans to get into Shin Megami Tensei, because I don't know how many people that worked on me. I have Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance ready to go right after I beat Nocturne. I'm really looking forward to it. It's a completely different style of game than Persona, but it still has that Atlus charm. Cool and fun characters, and whereas Persona largely focuses in on storytelling and character development, this game focuses in on setting a tone, a really cool aesthetic, and the combat, and I think it does a great job of doing that. The game just feels well designed. And yeah, those are my first impressions. I think I've mulled over Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne HD Remaster Maniacs long enough. Almost as long as it takes to say the name of the game. And I think I'll call the video there for the day. Thank you all for tuning in. My pleasure for making the video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe. It'd really help the channel out and help support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. Stay safe, have a great day, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Until we meet again.